everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Daisy Jones and the Six Rewatch podcast. When I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which is another way to say Carpe Diem. And that's all about going after the things that you want in life. So, something that I wanted to do this year was rewatch the show Daisy Jones and the Six and talk about it with other people. And we're up leveling that now. I'm getting a chance to talk with people who worked on this show. And before I introduce my guest for today, just a quick housekeeping item. If you haven't seen the whole show, Daisy Jones and the Six, these interviews could be spoiler filled. We could mention any detail from any episode. So just know that up front. If you want to catch up on the show first and come back to it, that's great. It's an easy, quick, fun binge. But otherwise, stick around because I'm very excited to talk with my guest for today, who is Checco Varese, who was the director of photography for episodes one, two, three, four, five, and seven when we go to Greece. So welcome, Checco.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I really appreciate and I really appreciate the possibility of going back in memory to Daisy Jones. That was an exceptional journey of fun and music and passion.
I'm so excited to talk with you about it. And for those who are watching this, just know like Checo's a busy person. He's working on another project as we speak. So the fact that you're even here, Checo, speaks volumes to how special the project was, that you would want to make time to go back and bring this back from your memory.
Yeah, for the audience, Melissa has been very patient with me. I changed the appointment 5 times. And this is not the decor of my house, by the way. This is not my taste. I'm in a hotel in Toronto shooting um, a wonderful Amazon show it doesn't matter. But I've been traveling the world and thank you, Melissa.
Spoken like a real director of photography. You know, you look at what's in your frame, you're not happy with it, and you want people to know.
Exactly. And I'm looking at the wrong side. By the way, I'm on my iPad, so the camera is there, but I'm looking at you, so it looks like I'm looking somewhere else. It's driving me nuts. I'll get another camera one of these days.
Well, that just goes to show you how interesting this conversation is going to be because we're going to get into it. But first, before we get into the details, how did you get connected to the show?
Um, Mike Nelson, the producer of Daisy Jones, came in to do one episode or 2 episodes of a show I was that coincided with the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we stopped, and then he came right after the pandemic, and he talked to me and said, "I have this show. What do you think?" And this was a casual conversation. How would you shoot it? What would you do with the big concerts? Would you do this? Would you do that? Um, and sure enough, a month later, he called me and said, "Do you want to shoot Daisy Jones?" And I said, "Daisy what?" And he remembered that show we talked. And I said, "Yes, of course." Yeah. So I read the scripts. I confess I never read the book before. So I read the book first and then I read the scripts. And I was fascinated by it. And I was fascinated also by one event that I don't know if you know, but this show was slated to go before the pandemic. So they casted 5 members or 6 members of the band, and the pandemic hit. And between the producers, Yellow Sunshine, Mike Nelson, I believe Amazon, I'm not sure, they all decided to keep the band as a group and rehearse the songs for 9 months. So that was to me a testament, first of all, to the actors that learned how to play. Most of them had no idea they could play, but also a testament to the truthfulness of them performing and singing and dancing and playing guitar and piano. So to me, that was fascinating.
So good. So it's interesting though, because you started after the pandemic, so you didn't really have as much prep time as everybody else did.
No, well, yes, I had enough prep time for a director of photography. There was one director for 5 episodes and another director for the other five, well, 5.5, however. And one director of photography for 5 episodes, myself and a colleague of mine for the other 5. So we shot it like a movie, like a very long movie. So Usually when you do episodes, whether it's a limited series or whatever, you prep for 3 weeks and you shoot two, and then you prep for a week and you shoot the other two. In this case, we prep for, I don't know how many, 13 weeks, and we shot for the 5 hours of the first block, which was the Titanic of limited series.
Hmm. Well, for those who aren't familiar with the industry, what would you say a director of photography does, or what did you do on this show?
Ooh, do you have time? That's a long question.
We sure do. Yeah.
Director of photography, it's also known as a cinematographer or the cameraman. Um, Basically, what you do is, I'll tell you my process, which is different than everybody else's process. So I get the script, I read it 3 times. Let's say it's a movie or a limited series like Daisy Jones. I read the script the first time as an audience, as a piece of literature. So I read the whole thing. And then scripts has what they call slot lines. So it says exterior day, such and such street. The second time I read it, I read only the dialogue. I don't read the location. I don't read anything to understand if an audience would understand the story or what do I need to bring in. And then the third time I start pointing out my tools. So what director of photography does is we're in charge. Whatever you see in a movie, it's produced by the production designer. So the walls, the sets, the furniture, the wardrobe is a wardrobe designer. The hair, it's the hair person, and the makeup and the actors. All those combined are directed by a director, and the director says who goes where and who does what. I'm there to take all these elements from this canvas and make them look the way the story needs to be told. If there is an emotional moment, there's a conversation with the director, and every director is different. Some director will come to me and say, I want this lens and this camera move. Some directors come to me and say, what is your instinct? So you're in charge of the look. You're in charge of everything that is on the frame in terms of color, framing, camera language, emotions that the camera can give. And then you're in charge of a gazillion things, but all of them related to two key elements: the script and the director. So I serve the script and I serve the director equally. Sometimes there is disagreement between the director and the showrunners or the writers. I stay out of it because that's not my place. I'm there to serve the story. And if somebody chose the director is the one that tells the story. I don't know if I answered your question. It's very oblique, but
No, that's perfect. I think for those who don't have much familiarity with the industry, it's important that we set up with that before I can ask you any more technical questions. So as part of that, knowing that you did the first block of episodes, that means that you were establishing a visual language for the show that pretty much didn't exist. As a fan, we watch the show and we see the world in front of us, but you have to create it. So, what goes into this? What kind of conversations were had at the start of your prep to help you figure out what this was going to look like?
so the first thing, once you read the script, and Daisy Jones was a very specific script, we had a cast of 5 + 1, 6, Daisy Jones and the 6, and we had many other members, but so we did what is called makeup and hair and wardrobe test. So you go in front of the camera and you go into Daisy or Riley Keough and you say, okay, this is the look of Riley when she's young. This is the look of Riley when she's older. This is the look of Riley when she's whatever, after a concert or tired or happy, and this is the wardrobe for the several iterations of her character. Being such a large cast, we had 6 or 7 days of camera test, which is not normal. Usually you do it in a couple of days, but it was very generous by the production. And that gave me enough time to test different looks and different camera languages. For whoever hasn't seen Daisy, Daisy starts in the 60s, 65, 67, and goes all the way to 90 something. But the actual core is 70 something to 80 something, or 70. So there is what is meant to be a flashback is really a flashback, because flashback to me is something that is, okay, 1890s, my grandfather, whatever, so that's a flashback. But 2 weeks ago, yes, it's a flashback because it's 2 weeks ago, but it shouldn't look that different than today. So you start all those conversations with yourself. Usually, 3 in the morning, I wake up and I started thinking and writing in a piece of paper. I'm a son of the 20th century, so I still write on paper. So the establishing the look of Daisy was very interesting because first of all, I have to say, I grew up in South America. So all that music period, it's not familiar to me. I mean, I heard whoever was playing in the 70s in the States. Of course, it arrived to the radio in Peru, but it wasn't part of I wasn't familiar with it. And when we were going to shoot in some of the studios and some of the locations that were the original studios with some of the super famous bands, which I didn't know the names because I didn't grow up here. So I would go to a studio and everybody's, oh my God, such and such recorded here that album. And I'm like, okay. Okay, good. It's like taking you to, and I don't know if you play soccer, like soccer or not, but taking you to the bar where the father of Maradona was working in 1950s in Argentina. It's like, oh my God, this is the temple of soccer. And you go, okay, nice. So I think that gave me a fresh view on an element, because if you're embedded in the story, you bring your own, for better or worse, you bring your own reasons and your own aesthetics and your own experiences. I was completely virgin about it. I had no idea about anything. So that gave me carte blanche to create a look, and a look that was appropriate to the story, but also fresh. And I didn't want it to make, I don't know, black and white flashbacks. No, black and white is the 40s, 30s. This is sort of maybe faded. And then another big task of a cinematographer is to choose the lenses. So you choose your camera, which is the medium you record it. And if you were to be a painter, you choose to paint in, let's say, oil or acrylic. And you choose to paint in a canvas. So that's the camera. And then you choose your lenses. And your lenses are basically the brushes, the little tiny or big brushes. We don't paint everything with a roller. We paint with this brush and we paint that with that brush. So we did a big test and we landed in some specific lenses that were actually never used before or used very seldomly before. The Ingenieur Primes, and those gave us the possibility of changing the look, putting some filters for slightly flashbacky look, some other filters for more contemporary look. So that was through, I think, a week of testing. And then we were ready.
You may have been answering this question along the way, but in the first episode, Come and Get It, you have to move through time really quickly. And you get 1961, 1968, and 1970 that are all represented here. So, what were some of the things that you were doing to distinguish it, especially in an episode where they're all sort of smashed together like that?
If I recall correctly, because I haven't watched Daisy in a couple of years or a year, the 1961 part is when she's very little and she plays piano in her house and there is a party and the mom comes, or piano, sorry, she starts singing with the headsets and the mom comes and reprimands her because nobody wants to hear her voice, or something like that. What we did is basically you juxtapose two elements. One is this very small child that was, I don't know, 6, 5, 6, something like that. you would usually film it in a happy way, in a camera moving, sort of following this beautiful little child trying to sing and make it joyous. And to juxtapose this beautiful image, we locked off the camera and we didn't move it. The camera practically doesn't move, if I recall correctly. And we used some filters in the back of the lens to give it a little bit of a glowing light in the practical to the right, I believe it was. There is a desk and there is a light there, so that light was glowing. The next element is when she escapes the house, I believe, and she breaks out of the house, and she ends up at the whiskey a go-go, I guess. Okay, so that one was the element of the 60s, this red colors. Technicolor was a time of process where the colors are very vibrant. If you look at that scene, it's very vibrant, it's very 60s. It's almost, as opposed to make it faded, which would have been the traditional flashback concept, we decided, okay, let's make it vibrant because she is in the 60s. The audience sees that, but she is in the 60s, so we are seeing this through her experience, not through our experience. So the norm is, it's the 60s, it needs to be faded, and it needs to be scratched, it needs to be grainy. No, the 60s was vibrant and colorful and full of acid and drugs for whoever was there. And if we are looking at it with her eyes, then we should feel the same. And the other thing that was very interesting, my gaffer, which is a gaffer, it's the gentleman or lady, in this case, Nick, that is in charge of lighting. And I have a grip that is in charge of shaping the light and the camera. So Rick and Nick, my gaffer and my key grip, we look for lights that existed in the 60s and 70s. Because now if you go to a rental house, you're renting LEDs. And they look great, but they don't look period. And they don't light your face or my face like a period. So we dusted some old bar cans and things that were used in the 60s and 70s and still exist, and we use them. And we lit the whole whiskey a go-go with those. We had to take down modern fixtures, and we shot in the location.
So interesting. And one of the things actually that I've been wanting to ask about, I'm not sure to what extent this was your area, but in the overall show, one of the effects we get a lot is this feeling of looking through Camila's lens, because sometimes she's taking still photos, sometimes she's taking video footage of things, and then sometimes we'll seem to see a scene through that lens. To what extent was that work that you were doing, or how much of that was in post?
Most of it was done for real. You said she was shooting photos and video. She was shooting Super 8, what your grandfather would have shot, or your dad, or I have Super 8 film from my dad. So we bought a Super 8 camera, which is the one she uses. We bought two, one for her as a prop, and one for us as a camera to shoot with. And we shot actual film. We send it to develop. So what you see, 99% of the time, I think there is one time that there is actual footage affected to look like Super 8, but 99% of the time is actual Super 8. Actual Super 8 technology from the 50s. And I inherited the camera. I have it at home and have it with film. And every year in somebody's birthday, I take a little roll of film and process it. And it's great.
So interesting. Okay, so now you have this wonderful souvenir from the show too. You were talking earlier about like sort of locking down the camera versus having camera movement. One scene where we see a lot of movement is in this episode, the first time Daisy sings publicly. She's in a little bar with a piano. It has almost nobody in it, but it feels like a momentous event for Daisy. And the camera is like really bringing us into her world. How did you approach a scene like this?
So another responsibility of the cinematographer or director of photography is to choose the crew And by choosing the crew, I mean choosing my collaborators, but also choosing the cameraman, which in this case, it's an exceptional team of friends of mine. One is Joseph Arena and the other one is Josh Turner. Joseph Arena is a Steadicam operator. Steadicam is a floaty camera that you walk with and it floats. It's a rig. The camera is the same. You just walk around with this thing. And he's an artist. He's a genius. So in that case, we had Daisy playing at the piano, and the camera was very low, only seeing her eyes, not seeing her hands. And then we had another camera seeing her hands, and we were moving around because I do believe that camera movement can tell a story as much as words. And in this case, the camera movement was the movement of freedom. Or, let me rephrase that, not the movement of freedom, the movement of her newfound purpose in life, not freedom. I don't think she's free until much later, but I don't even know if she's ever free. But the movement of this purpose in life, she found purpose, and that movement gave her, Riley or Daisy gave us the freedom of moving the camera for the first time.
Hmm. That's a beautiful way to frame that. Well, to talk about that. I'm just sort of thinking back to how I talked about it in the deep dive, and I love this word of like she now has a purpose, and we're following that. When you have a purpose, you don't just stand still, and so neither did the camera.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But you have to transmit that to the audience, and that was a way to do it.
There's in episode 2, there's this moment I absolutely love. It's the episode's called I'll Take You There. The Dunn brothers are going to pay a visit to Rod at his, I guess it's a condo or apartment complex. I love the humor you're able to insert into this scene because of some of the camera choices. Because as the scene progresses, it's a serious scene for the most part. Rod's always a little not serious, but it's a serious scene. But the camera keeps pulling back throughout the scene until we get towards the end and we realize that like he's just wearing a robe and boots. And it made me laugh so hard when we get to that at the end. When you think about this show, are there like what other moments come to mind for you in terms of the camera being able to set a humorous direction for maybe a scene that wasn't actually that on the page?
I don't know. I'm a very serious person. I don't have a sense of humor. I don't know. I don't know. I think there is a scene. It's a great scene in which, and I don't know which episode it is, when Daisy is in the Chateau Marmont, in her apartment of the Chateau Marmont, and the light comes through the bed, and we see Riley, which is gorgeous, and we see and discover her, and the phone rings, the actual 1980s, 70s phone. She picks it up and says, yes, yes, yes. She hangs up, and then the camera moves up, and there is someone in the bed, and she turns and says, okay, you gotta go now, dude. And you see the back of this hairy guy, which you never see the face, but the camera was playing with us. The camera was having a moment of humor because you think it's a sensual scene or sexy or sexual scene, whatever, you know, but it's not. It's like, now you go out. And I thought that was, yeah, I think that it's one of those other moments where the camera misdirects the audience, and then the story drives you back down to earth.
It's a perfect example. Yeah, I thought about that scene quite a lot. And it really like we look at there's like a ledge over her bed and she's got the wine
Exacto, exacto.
glasses.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
White
Yeah.
glasses, and yeah, yeah.
It takes forever for us to see this poor man. Uh,
Exactly. And we don't even see him. He goes away, and it's irrelevant for us, as irrelevant as it was for Daisy at that point.
yeah.
And that's the point. He was a vehicle for her insatisfaction, and he ended up a vehicle for our insatisfaction because we, as an audience, we probably would have loved to see her in love with this guy, but she's not. And the
Yeah.
camera tells you that story, you know? It's like, nope, okay, next. Let's get
Yeah.
another. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's go to the Dunn brothers' house in Laurel Canyon. What do
Oh my
you
God.
remember about shooting in this space? It feels like it all came flooding back to you just then. Wow.
No, yeah, which one? The house where he moves with Camila?
Let's start the one before that. That was the house they had found because a
Oh,
woman had
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
passed away in it.
Yeah. That was a beautiful location found somewhere in Echo Park. Um, it wasn't Laurel Canyon because Laurel Canyon is not an easy place to shoot, and uh, there's very little roads. Um, the choice of the house was great because you needed a house and you needed a little tiny house for him to go on exile with Camila, you know. Um, and that house served the purpose of that very nicely. In practical terms, it was great. It had a little hill, and we rented the garage of the other people so we could light at night from there without a big machine or whatever. Um, and the interior of the house was very 60s. The production designer, which is the other element, the production designer, she was amazing. Um, and she made us, and the decorator made us walk into that house and be in the 60s, which I've never been. And Les Heard, which is much younger than me. I mean, I remember the 60s because I was born in the 60s. By the time I was 8, I was in the 70s. I have no idea, And to research, the house was great. It was it. They had a porch, which was sort of a garage or a carport where we put the band rehearsal area. So we were covered from weather or they were the band covered from weather. Oh, there's another very comical element that happens there when they're looking for the other lead singer, when they're trying to replace the lead singer, and all these guys come and to sing, and it's pathetic, you know. Um, and the camera doesn't move, and then these people come in and out and in and out and in and out. So we shot that in the house.
Mm. And then you seemed pretty excited to talk about Billy and Camilla's house that they get after they start getting those royalty checks. What about that space?
Visually excited, personally challenged. It was a miserable location. It was up in the hill. You couldn't park anything. It was at the curve. So when you park something to drop equipment, the cars were driving. But that's the that's the life of a film crew. The house was great. It had all the elements of up and down that gave sort of and maybe I'm philosophizing a little too much, but it gave the up and downs of the relationship, purpose. It had a garden, and the garden was very sort of dystopian because there was like people up and people down, and then there is a very interesting moment when the light go out, and that's an historical event, I believe. The light goes out, and you'll help me remember the
That
name
was
of
actually, yeah. So that was in episode
the
4, I believe. I saw
the
the
very
light.
the very famous singer at that point that they sing.
They sing the song Ooh La La. Is
Yeah,
that the one you're thinking of?
yeah, yeah. But they
Yeah.
sing it because there was the birthday of some very famous singer of the 70s. I can't remember what it was.
Mhm.
Um, so we had to rig the whole house with our own lights to be able to turn them off at a cue. So you turn them off at a cue, but then again, it cannot be pitch black. So there has to be moonlight coming from somewhere. Moonlight. It has to be. I don't wanna say something that is not appropriate for your podcast, but we call it in the film business BS light.
Mhm.
It's a light when you see a horror movie, there's a
Yeah.
guy with a flashlight, but you still see the monster. You can see it, and so you have to create some kind of ambience lighting that illuminates the scene, even though the character doesn't see anything. So so we turned the lights off and the lights on for the moon, and then they started with candles. And we used a camera that was the same camera we used for the show, Sony Venice. And that one day we pushed the ASA, which is the sensitivity of the camera, very high. So the candles could illuminate the faces, as high as the engineers in Japan didn't like the number I gave them, but it's okay. I don't care. So it was fun. So it becomes a very romantic, a very telling moment between, and then Daisy goes up and picks up the little girl Camila and comes down and it gives it to Billy and you know it becomes a very beautiful moment for all of them, you know.
I was going to ask about that scene because it was so beautifully lit. Another space that I want to talk about, which we see for the first time in episode 3. We're going to get Daisy and Billy recording together for the first time at Sound City. Sound City is something we are going to see a lot of in your episodes. By episode, so I imagine that it's a very tight squeeze in that space. I mean, there's the control room part, and then there's which feels like a tight space. And then there's the space where the performers are, which we often get a lot of movement with the camera there. So tell us a bit about shooting here and what the complexity was with it.
It was also very interesting. The very first time, I'm mixing both spaces up. There is the first time they sing together, and then there is another time where they successfully sing together and the camera moves around a lot. So the very first time, it's a little bit more of an antiseptic space, sort of like top lights. I wasn't trying to make it friendly for Daisy because it wasn't, you know. As a cameraman, as a cinematographer, at least myself, I try to put myself in the point of view of the character. And always the question is, whose scene is this? You know, because you read the scene and it may end up feeling that it's Billy's scene because he's the one in charge. He's the one that goes to the booth and says, who's this crazy woman? Why do you want me to sing with her? She's changing my words and my words are sacred. Truly, the one in control of the scene is Daisy. Because at the end, she does what she wants. So I wanted her to be fragile with this non-pleasant lighting. And we created that sort of antiseptic space in a much more interesting space where the music recording was happening and our friend, I can't remember the name, the manager, Teddy, where Teddy was smoking and sort of being very proud of what the puppeteering of this whole relationship. So that was that. And then the following time, and after that, they go to his house, which is a fantastic location in Baldwin Hills, overlooking Los Angeles. So that window is not a stage with some backdrop. That window is the view of Los Angeles of this house. And when they were playing there, she jumps in the pool, and I remember there was somebody said, "Okay, she's gonna jump in the pool," and I said, "Okay, let's get a whatever underwater camera so I can do a shot." And my DIT, which is my colorist on set, said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. We should get the best camera because the underwater shots always end up in a trailer." And like Daniele. And I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, he's right. Every time there is an underwater shot, it's sexy and the water. And sure enough, it ended up in the trailer. So we had a very special camera with somebody on a diving suit waiting for Riley to jump in. And it was funny.
Did you end up using the same camera for the Karen and Graham surfing scenes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I shot that one with a wetsuit. It's very cold in LA, so I had to have a wetsuit.
Oh my goodness. Beautiful work though. It looks like punishing on the body, but
the Caribbean, man. Like it's cold and freezing and anyway, I ended up there with a surf photographer, but I was there with them. You know, it was fun. So then they come out of that house finally with a new song, and we go to the slightly larger studio. And at that point, the performers of the 70s, 80s, and probably today they do too, they bring their own stuff to the performing studio. So they bring, whether it's incense or patchouli or whatever it is they bring, but they also bring the good luck lamp. Or so this place was full of like lamps with beautiful, colorful shawls and handkerchiefs on top of the lights. And at that point, we made it way more romantic, I would say, way more pleasant, way more shaped in terms of lighting. And we unleashed my operator and said, okay, they're going to play it 3 times. You just shoot the hell out of it. And he did, and it's a beautiful movement around him and her. And then when they hug each other, towards the very end, you see in the reflection Teddy, and then the reflection you see Daisy, and then you rack focus to him in the foreground. That was a beautiful, 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 but it was also foreboding of the future. Who are these two people that are hugging when they hated each other 5 minutes ago?
Mm. I want to go back a little bit to in episode 4, we see the Diamond Head Festival. And when this show gets to, let's say, episodes 8, 9, and 10, we are going to see a lot of concert footage. And the band needs to look at that point like a polished band that has been playing together for a while. But in the Diamond Head Festival, the Dunn brothers had been playing together for a while, but Daisy had not been playing with them. So I'm curious, like when you're given the task of shooting this concert, how were you approaching it knowing they had to have a lot of room to grow?
That's a very good question. Jeff Cutter, the cinematographer of the later episodes, he got in the task of being in a stadium. Hopefully, I'm not breaking any rules, but in a stadium that most of it is empty because you cannot hire 50,000 extras, So you hire 2,000 extras on a good day, and you just put them in 17 different places, and then visual effects matches there. So he got the task of doing a huge stadiums and huge polished looks. I got the task of an interesting concert in an interesting place that happens in Hawaii, in the volcano, in the center of a volcano, of an inactive volcano. So we shot it in a beautiful place in Northern California, whatever, Santa Clarita. And one of the ideas was, instead of the very polished lighting that they would have had, because this happened in the afternoon. So how you make a concert look good in the afternoon? So we placed the stage in a way that the sun was setting right behind them. We timed it in a way that we shot all the scenes prior and after that. They're driving to it, and then at the end they fight. So we shot all those scenes before, and then with 5 cameras for 3 hours we shot the concert. And the last take is literally the sun right behind, between Daisy and Billy. We put a lot of lights on frame, so it looks very raw, and we used, again, period lights. And I think what happened is that the setting is raw. The setting is desert. It's not polished. And that helped selling the genesis of a band, or the birth of a band, or the, however you want to call it, the whale coming out of the water of a band, this splash of water that it's so enriching.
It's a really nice metaphor to put to it, actually. Um, If we look at episodes, well, first of all, I have questions about episode 7, but did you do all of episode 7 or were there certain parts that you were focused on?
Episode 7 is the one on
Greece and Simone in New
in New
York.
York. So I did all of 7.
Okay.
I probably one scene in New York I didn't do, but I like the concert. Sorry, where she plays when Simone plays in these New York bars in Studio 54 and whatever it is.
Exactly.
We shot that in Greece, in
Yeah.
Athens.
So let's talk about that for a moment. So, what were you doing to distinguish the disco scene that Simone and Bernie were immersed in versus the types of clubs and bars we had seen uh, Daisy or the Dunn brothers in earlier? How were you differentiating those things?
The disco scene comes like anything in life. I'm not sure if anything in life, but like many things in life, life is here and then technology catches up and technology changes things, you know. Um, when the disco scene happened, there was a level of technology that allowed you to move the lights. Before the lights were fixed, you just had a screw and you put them on the ceiling. When the disco scene happened, there was a motorized light so it could go up and down and left and right. So the music adapted to the lights or the lights adapted to the music, I don't know. But the marriage of the disco scene is this flashing light, which before couldn't happen because the technology wasn't there. And I'm talking about the 80s versus, sorry, late 70s versus the early 70s. You know, it was so when we were in Greece, we found a lighting designer, which I had worked before. And by lighting designer, I mean someone that does big, like the opening of the Olympics or the World Bank meeting of whatever. So he illuminates these huge spaces. So I found him and we talked about it. And then he called, he read the script, he got very enthusiastic, and he called a friend of his that was the lighting designer of Studio 54 in New York 35 years before. So in conference calls with this gentleman, his gentleman said, this is how I did it in 70 something. So we designed that space with the units, again, finding units in Turkey, whatever, finding units that will replicate that time period, which is completely different. It goes with the rock and roll didn't have, the 70s had a little bit of pulsing light, but disco has this manic pulsing light that can only be given by this new technology, but also by the music. So we designed it in a way that it made sense with the story, but it also made sense with the period.
Mm.
I wouldn't have been able to do it without somebody. I'd never been to Studio 54, you know. I was a journalist and a war correspondent when people were dancing in Studio 54. I had no idea. So this guy that designed it is the one that gave us the clue.
Brilliant. I mean, it came out looking great. So in this episode, the show goes to Hydra. I have since I've had a couple of interviews where people have sent me afterwards photos of the experience of working on Hydra. I have one picture of a mule going up a set of stairs within a tight alley with a sofa on its back. I'd love to know from your perspective what it was like to shoot
If
here.
you promise not to publish it, I can send you a picture of me on a mule with a camera holding it like this, trying to follow the other mules up the hill. Hydra
I
doesn't have any
promise.
cars. Hydra doesn't have any cars. There's an ambulance. There is one vehicle that transports like water and gas tanks, you know, natural gas, and that's about it. And vehicles are forbidden. You're not allowed to bring anything. So you have mules and muleteers. So my department had 30 mules and 10 muleteers. And you wrap the boxes around the mule, and a mule can take 2 camera boxes. I travel with 20 camera boxes, therefore I need 10 mules. The math is great.
I didn't know the word muleteer. That's a new one for me.
It's the gentleman in charge, it's the driver of the mules, it's the
Wow.
muleteer. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Jesus, sorry.
Oh no.
Like my iPad just fell from a very precarious.
Well, we need a
Yeah.
muleteer to help fix
I
everything for
think
us.
I need an iPateer.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it seems so incredibly complicated. This part of the episode, this episode feels totally different to me from the rest of the series, but is in conversation with the rest of the series. But it's important that it feels that way because this is a much needed break for Daisy from the world that she's been in. So, to what extent did this allow you to change the visual styling, or were you trying to find ways to tie it
Oh,
together?
completely, completely. We changed not the lenses, but we changed the filtration in the lenses. We changed the depth of field, which is the amount of focus you can see in the background. Um, I never decided anything by myself, but we talked about having the endless depth of field, So we shot at a very high stop, which means you can see my hand, but you can also see the window, and you can also see the ocean in the back, because that gave Daisy the ability to see everything, but also to be betrayed by everything. Um, if you see everything and you don't see what is coming, then you're in trouble because you're blind to what is coming. If you don't see, I'll go to the analogy of the horror movie again. It's like you're an audience and the guy is about to open the closet and the whole audience goes, "Oh, open the closet, don't open the closet. The monster is in, or the killer is inside the closet." You open the closet, he looks, there is nothing, he closes, and the assassin is here. Then the surprise relieves the victim of guilt. But if the victim has seen the assassin and walks towards him and gets killed, then there is no guilt. Therefore, the audience feel, okay, it's deserved. So by showing Daisy the whole universe, I think we took out of her decision making. We gave her the decision to be betrayed by this mirage of an Italian prince.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. I
I
love
don't
this way
even
of
know if if I don't explain it, I don't even know if that translates. But for me and for Riley and for the director that we were there, this contraption gave us purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it is an interesting, when you really start, even if you can like freeze some frames there, I mean, Hydra is built up on it's all a hill, right? So having that depth of field is like she's on top of the world and she can see everything, but she can't see what's right ahead. What a great way to frame this.
That was sort of the idea, and the colors are different, and she's healthier. Her skin is radiant. Not that Riley's skin is never not radiant, but her skin is radiant. She's a little bit more tan, and she's all poppy like a sparkling water, bubbly. In the colors, like the bougainvilleas falling onto like the frame, and the camera moves through the bougainvilleas. That was a choice.
Mm. Oh, it's so beautiful. Well, I mean, look, we could talk about scenes forever, but I want to ask,
But
mhm.
one thing, and the muleteers come with one specialized muleteer that cleans after the mules, because the mules don't have a bathroom time, so all the streets of Hydra are perfectly clean because there's like local employees that go around with big brooms and trash, collecting mules, whatever.
Exactly. Oh my
So
goodness.
we had two of those people working with us, and it was perfectly synchronized, and it was fantastic.
This is amazing the details we're learning about working in Greece. Well, this specific part of Greece.
Yeah,
Um, you've done so many shows and movies, you've worked on so many projects. What stands out to you as different about the process of working on this show?
I've never done a show about music. I've done musical. I've done a show that has music in it, but I've never done a show that it comprises, I don't know how many, 27 songs, and each episode has a particular song which tempo affects the episode. So to me, it was a pleasure. The cast were amazing. I mean, I'm still friends. I'm still in contact with Camila, with Riley, with Suki, and with the boys. Once in a while, Instagram, hey, how are you? Where are you? And that's not usual. And in this case, they became a family, and I'm sort of the cousin. So it was very special. It was very, very special. Also, it was very special, I think, because we came out of the pandemic, which was a very hard hit to the world, to humanity, and to our industry. And just being able to play a song and sing and sing along with the actors and light a song, I think that it's imprinted in my memory as a happy moment, you know.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Your work touches so many different departments. Are there any unsung heroes that you wanted to acknowledge, which is a bit of an unfair question, but you can name or you can share departments that you wanted to shout out. Who was a big part of making this happen for you?
I'm only as good as everybody around me are, and every single person from the transport department that woke up 3 hours before every single one of us and pick us up or pick the truck up, from the travel coordinator that coordinated trips to Greece and back, everyone. There is there are a few people that are important on a set: the actors, the director, and then everybody else. It's a piece of the machinery, and it's a machinery that either works well or it doesn't work, or it works well and with passion and happiness. This was a machine that worked well with passion and happiness. Some others don't, you know. We still do a great job, but I can't wait to get out of there. Daisy, I can't wait to do another episode, or whatever. I know it's not going to happen, but what I'm saying is I can't wait to work with them again.
Hmm. Yeah, as we wrap up here, is there anything else you wanted us to know about your work on this show that I didn't ask the question to get us there, but you want to make sure the audience has heard about it?
It's a show about a strong woman,
Hmm.
and we need more shows about strong women. We had way too many shows about strong men, and look at where we are
Hmm.
in the world. So we
Beautifully
need
said.
more shows about strong women.
Here, here. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Checco, for taking all this time and talking with all of us about your experience on Daisy Jones and the Six.
Thank you, and thank you for your time, and thank you for bringing me back to Daisy Jones.
I can't believe how much you remember. My goodness. To everybody who's watching this, thank you for watching and go out there. Don't be the muse, be the somebody. Bye, everyone.